Jake Knapp turns around, strokes it in, and becomes the 15th sub-60 round in PGA Tour history.
It's been a busy month on the PGA Tour, and to dive into some of the stats, we are joined by our data insights lead, Lou Stagner, to really find out what stood out from a data perspective from the players that won and some players that shot some really low scores. Lou, the one thing that just happened this past week at the Cognizant is Jake Knapp shot 59. Now that doesn't happen that often on the PGA Tour. What really stood out and allowed him to do that this week?
Well, let's start with what didn't stand out. His putting, while it was solid, he gained 2.59 shots with his putter, wasn't off the charts, which is typically what you see when someone goes that low. On 17 of 18 holes, the longest putt that he made was inside of 11 feet 9 inches, which means his ball striking was on fire. He was ranked first in strokes gained off the tee and strokes gained approach. That's really what allowed him to shoot that 59.
It goes to show how important driving is on the modern PGA Tour, because the straighter and the longer you drive it, or at least driving it in play, the more likelihood that next shot is going to get closer to the hole, and the more likely that you're probably going to make the next one, right?
Yeah, and Jake has no shortage of distance. He can move it, low 180s ball speed, and he was getting it out there, hitting fairways, hitting it close, and then converting on those short putts he had.
Now, speaking of a winner, Brian Campbell won in Mexico, and for him, he did play the 18th hole extremely well for the week.
Is that a winning putt? We'll see. That was clutch.
Yeah, Campbell played great on the par 5 18th hole. He was 5 under for the week, and he's just the 12th player in ShotLink history to reach 5 under or better on a closing hole in a win. He went for the green in 2 in every round on the 18th hole, and he averaged 33 feet in proximity, which was the closest of any player, and the field averaged 115 feet there. And I think what it shows is on par 5s, you want to give yourself on the PGA Tour an opportunity to hit the green in 2. So you want to put yourself in a good spot off the tee to give yourself a chance to go for it, and then hit a really solid shot in there for the second one and get it on or around the green. And that's exactly what he did. And then when he was around the green, his strokes gained around the green was he gained 1.73 shots just on the 18th hole alone. So his short game played a huge role in allowing him to convert birdies on that par 5.
Yeah, I looked at his numbers there, and he's not one of the longest players on the PGA Tour. In fact, he's probably one of the shortest. So yeah, it goes to show just how, if you're able to get those shots around the green closer, you can still make up a lot of shots.
Yeah, definitely. He is not the longest guy out there by any stretch, and he really carried the week with his strokes gained, approach play, and around the green. So approach play accounted for 42% of his overall strokes gained, and around the green contributed 39% for his overall strokes gained, which is pretty high for a winner.
Speaking of proximity, Ludvig Aberd won the Genesis Invitational at Torrey Pines this past month, and his ball striking was absolutely stellar for the whole week. It was pretty incredible.
He had a really, really solid ball striking week. He made birdie or better on 35% of his approach shots from over 150 yards, which was the highest percentage in the field. The field average for birdies from outside 150 yards was 18%, and Ludvig was nearly double the average for the field.
Now that applies obviously to any shot into a green, but it also applies to shots on par 3s, and he stood out there as well, didn't he?
He stood out a lot on par 3s. So he gained 10.04 strokes against the field on just the par 3s. It's the most gained on par 3s by any player over the last 5 seasons. And in that time span, there's been over 14,000 players that made the cut, played all 4 rounds. And he's gained more on par 3s than any of those players. I actually went back even further, and I looked 18 years back, and he's the most across 18 years as well.
That's incredible.
The other thing which is fascinating is Ludvig lost 0.66 strokes on the par 4s. It's the worst performance on par 4s by a winner over the last 5 seasons. And he's the only winner to have negative strokes gained on the par 4s, which is really unusual.
That's crazy. I think like that.
Par 3s carried the day.
Let's not forget that Ludvig also made a hole-in-one on Saturday at the Genesis, and that for sure certainly helps with strokes gained. Bring it right back in. Ludvig. Speaking of strokes gained, another player that stood out was Thomas Dietrich at the WM Phoenix Open. He really kind of made his tournament on the par fours, didn't he, Lou?
He did, yeah. Dietrich played the par fours at 15 under, tying Scotty Scheffler for the lowest par four score by a winner at this event since 1987. His par four performance was better than Webb Simpson, who was 14 under in 2020, and Calcavecchia was also 14 under way back in 2001. Doesn't happen too often. So Dietrich gained 15.03 total strokes on the par fours. And going back 5 seasons across all 14,000 plus players that made the cut, this is the 6th best performance on par fours in that time frame.
And another standout from his win was how many shots he won by as well.
He did. He's only the 5th player since 2018 to win by 7 strokes or more.
That's impressive. So, we think about runaway winners, but it really doesn't happen that often. We see someone might make a birdie on the last hole and win by maybe a couple shots, or if someone tries to go for it. But to win by that many is not as common as we like to think.
The fields are pretty deep out there. There's a lot of good players. It's really challenging to get on that much of a heater and distance yourself from the pack that much.
All right, awesome. Thanks again for diving into the stats, Lou. And for those of us who love numbers out there, we are going to continue to do this running down for the rest of the season on the PGA Tour, so stay tuned for more.